Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Democratic congressional leaders say they'll introduce emergency legislation next week to include the struggling auto industry in the $700 billion Wall Street bailout. The Democratic plan would give car companies up to $50 billion in taxpayer money. It would either come as a standalone measure or as part of a broader package alongside new money for health care, food stamps, and public infrastructure. President-elect Barack Obama raised the issue with President Bush at their Monday White House meeting. Bush suggested he would only back an auto industry bailout if Democrats support the stalled free trade deal with Colombia, or so it was reported. The Colombia trade deal has been helped in part over human rights concerns, has been held back in part. On Tuesday, shares in the auto giant General Motors fell an additional 13% to its lowest level since 1943. More on this story after headlines. The incoming Obama administration continues to take shape. The Washington Post reports the nation's top two intelligence officials expect to be dismissed within months of Obama's inauguration. The Director of National Intelligence, Mike McConnell, and CIA Director Michael Hayden are linked to several controversial Bush administration policies, including the use of torture on prisoners and warrantless spying. As a senator, Obama voted against Hayden's nomination to protest his role in the warrantless spy program while heading the National Security Agency. Meanwhile, the Obama transition team says it's issued a set of regulations that'll limit the role of lobbyists in the incoming administration. Under the new rules, lobbyists joining the transition won't be allowed to work in the field in which they previously lobbied. And transition officials who go on to become lobbyists will not be allowed to lobby the Obama White House for at least a year. Obama aides have also announced the president-elect plans to create a White House Office of Urban Policy. The office would coordinate federal aid to U.S. cities. In other news from Washington, President-elect Obama has endorsed keeping independent Senator Joseph Lieberman of Connecticut in the Democratic caucus. Lieberman broke with his former party and openly campaigned for Republican nominee John McCain. Outraged Democrats have called for Lieberman to be stripped of his chairmanship of the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the UN's warning more than 100,000 refugees are cut off from aid behind rebel lines. Some 250,000 people have been displaced in fighting between government forces and rebel militias in eastern Congo since August. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon appealed for an immediate ceasefire.
But at least 100,000 refugees are cut off in areas north of the city. Chiefly around Rutsuru and East Masisi. Because of the ongoing fighting, these people have received virtually no assistance. Their situation has grown increasingly desperate. I urgently call for an immediate ceasefire in these areas to allow humanitarian assistance to reach many thousands of displaced persons.
Both sides have been accused of war crimes. On Tuesday, the UN said hundreds of Congolese soldiers committed rape and pillage in several villages as they pulled back from a rebel advance. In Israel and the occupied territories, the UN humanitarian agency is warning it's running out of food because of the latest Israel fuel blockade of the Gaza Strip. The UN's responsible for feeding 750,000 Palestinians in Gaza. Israel says it's imposed the latest blockade in response to Palestinian rocket fire, which came after an Israeli missile attack that killed 6 people last week. The UN says Israel's blocked several humanitarian shipments, including one to a school for blind children. UN spokesperson Christopher Guinness told Al Jazeera, quote, "These blind children, as far as I'm aware, are not firing rockets. Hundreds of thousands of ordinary people, including blind children who would have been assisted, are effectively being punished." Meanwhile, outgoing Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert has said a full-scale Israeli attack on Gaza is only a matter of time. Olmert made the comments Tuesday at an Israeli army base near Gaza.
We're in no hurry, but we know very well that the amount of confrontation will eventually come. The question is not whether there will be confrontation, but when will it take place, under what circumstances, and who will control these circumstances, who will dictate them, and who will know to exploit the time from the beginning of these ceasefire until the moment that the confrontation in the best possible way.
More on the situation in Gaza later in the broadcast. Russia's reiterating a warning over the Bush administration's missile system in Eastern Europe. Last week, Russian President Dmitry Medvedev said Russia will deploy short-range missiles near Poland if the U.S. proceeds with its controversial missile defense program. In the U.S., the statement was widely seen as a threat to the incoming Obama administration. But on Tuesday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov emphasized it would only apply if the U.S. carries out its plan to place missiles near Russia.
Мы сказали, что устами нашего президента, что в случае, если третий позиционный...
We declared through the words of our president, if the third positioning region of the U.S. anti-missile shield is created physically, one of the physical measures to...
We've gotten our message across that peace is patriotic.
Under the plan, Poland would host 10 ballistic missiles, along with a radar site in the Czech Republic. A majority of public opinion opposes the missile deployment in both countries. The Bush administration says the missile system would protect Europe from Iranian missiles, but it's widely seen as a first-strike weapon. President-elect Obama's plans for the missile system are unclear. He's only said he won't commit to it before taking office. Back in the United States, a group of anti-war veterans held a march here in New York Tuesday to mark Veterans Day. Hugh Bruce of Veterans for Peace was among those taking part.
We've gotten our message across that peace is patriotic. Opposing government policy doesn't mean I don't love my country any the less. It means that when we're wrong, we have to admit we've made a mistake and rectify it. Hopefully, the new administration is going to take some steps towards doing that.
The march came one day after 15 members of the group Iraq Veterans Against the War and their supporters pleaded not guilty to disorderly conduct charges stemming from their arrests outside the final presidential debate at Hofstra University last month. And executives at the government-rescued insurance giant AIG have been caught holding another secretive gathering at a luxury resort. Using hidden cameras, local ABC News reporters filmed AIG execs poolside at the Point Hilton Squaw Peak Resort in Phoenix, Arizona. AIG has admitted to asking the hotel to ensure there were no AIG signs and to instruct staff not to mention its presence. It's at least the second known resort getaway for AIG brass since their government rescue. In September, company executives held a week-long, nearly $500,000 retreat at a luxury resort just days after receiving the initial $85 billion in taxpayer money. On Monday, the Bush administration said it would give AIG an additional $40 billion, bringing its taxpayer tab to $150 billion so far.